Well, good evening and welcome, everybody. Glad that you're here. I'm Bob Johnston. I'm going to be your host and your MC this evening. And let me start with just a few quick housekeeping kind of announcements. If you haven't already figured it out, we have Norteño doing tacos back over here. 4 tacos for $12. Help yourself back that way. If you're a guest with us tonight, you've not been here yet, the bathroom's around the corner that way. Just keep walking back through the hallway and you'll find where we're going. I'm going to introduce our spotlight musician tonight, and then I'm going to come back later to tell you how the night's going to work and introduce our speaker and do all those kinds of things. Let me start out by tell you about our musician that's going to play in just a moment. Paul Demer is a singer-songwriter. He is a recording producer. He is a worship leader. He is an outreach musician. He plays in all kinds of different venues, bars and churches and hospitals and nursing homes, all kinds of different places that he's done. His music has been described in lots of different interesting ways, his music wraps up introspection and empathy and wonder and puts it all together in amazing kinds of different ways. So that's the way his music is sometimes described. It is likened to, sometimes people will say he's got a James Taylor feel to it, or John Foreman, or different people like that. His music is said to invite us to consider our own stories in the context of the ebb and flow of both joy and heartache. You can find his latest single, Full to the Brim, on all the different places where you stream music. Would you join me in welcoming Paul Demer?
You ran out of the fire and into the flame. Seems like the pain you fled had another name. I know you figured by now you'd have come out ahead. You fear your last-ditch hope was another dead end. But don't you start to give up the fight. You come a long, long way from home. And if you could see who I'm seeing tonight, you'd see a strength you didn't know. It's been a long road, but you're running to redemption, honey. You got your sorrows. It's hard to hide it when the tears keep coming. When you're running on fumes, just trying to forget all the fears you fear haven't happened yet. It's been a long road, but you're running to redemption, honey. Ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Tired of being so tired and giving your best, when all your effort leads to another day's stress. You try to lighten your load and give love a chance, but holding on's much harder than simple romance. It's been a long road, but you're running to redemption, honey. You got your sorrows. It's hard to hide it when the tears keep coming. When you're running on fumes, just trying to forget all the fears you fear haven't happened yet. It's been a long road, but you're running to redemption, honey. Yeah. Fear that the compassion's got you down. You'd spend all your hope and try to skip town. Won't you hold your horses till your feet hit the ground and you see? Yeah. It's been a long road, you're running to redemption, honey. You got your sorrows. It's hard to hide it when the tears keep coming, yeah. When you're running on fumes, just trying to forget all the fears you fear haven't happened yet. It's been a long road, but you're running to redemption, honey. Yeah, you're running to redemption, honey. Yeah. Ba-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Thank you very much. Thank y'all so much for having me here tonight. I love this Pub Theology. This is my third year doing one of these, and it's good to be back. So that last song was a song I wrote for my wife, who works as a nurse at Medical City, Dallas, and I wrote that for her right at the beginning of COVID, and just in the stress of compassion fatigue and burnout that was. This is a song I wrote for her and played the night before we got married, which was just over a year ago, and it was inspired by some hecklers from my church. I lead music at St. Matthew's Cathedral, and we have a food pantry ministry that I've been helping out with on Thursdays. And when I told some of our neighbors at the food pantry that I was about to get married, they decided to tease me to no end, and all the comments of ball and chain, and just the fear of commitment were coming out. And maybe I wrote this song in a dark night of the soul just to convince myself that marriage is indeed a good idea. And so it's called "The Joy in Limitation," which I think is very true. So this one isn't a Hollywood love song, but I think it's true. We bought camping chairs, 'cause it don't take much. I could sit in the shade of your steady love. You're a book to read, or a hand to touch, or a perfect day with the clouds above. You got one guitar, I can't get enough, but you've been reminding me of the better stuff. You say we got it all, and we got enough. Hold on to gratitude and the people you love, 'cause there's a joy in limitation, but it's a choice you have to make. Sometimes love's an obligation, and there's a joy in limitation. It's been ages since they married, but she still visits every day. Brings all the memories she can carry to remind him when he's afraid that there's a joy in limitation, but it's a choice you have to make. Sometimes love's an obligation, and there's a joy in limitation. We bought golden bands, 'cause it don't take much, just these earnest vows and our steady love. Now I take your hand with a timid touch, cloud of witnesses and the angels above. And there's a joy in limitation, but it's a choice you have to make. Sometimes love's an obligation, and there's a joy in limitation. There's a joy in limitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It's great. Looking forward to welcoming him back in a bit, where he'll do 3 more songs when we get to our break time. If you're just joining us, welcome. Glad that you're here. I'm Father Bob Johnston. I'm your host this evening. And I want to say a few things about tonight, what we're doing. We do Pub Theology every summer. Our intention is to come to a place that's easy to come to, that's neutral, and take on some interesting theological topics, the kind that anybody would want to hear, and then just engage them and have fun with that. And that's kind of what we're doing tonight. The evening is being hosted by St. Michael and All Angels. And again, if you don't know us, or if you're a guest with us, we're either the biggest or the second biggest Episcopal church in Dallas, but we're hidden away in a little neighborhood by Preston Center. So you'd have to kind of find us. We're at stmichael.org. Tonight is our last night of Pub Theology, so I want to pause here before we introduce our speaker and all the other stuff to thank a few people. I want to start by thanking the Pub Theology Committee that have done so many incredible things. I want to thank Tish Vasinski and Colleen O'Hara and Justin Brooks and just a whole bunch of people. And I got to say that it would be hard to figure out the MVP of Pub Theology, but I think Tish and Colleen would probably get that award. They'd have to share it, because we had to shift the first night to a different venue, and then last week we had to shift our whole plans about food for the evening. So they've done, along with all the other stuff that takes so much work, so they've been fantastic. I also want to thank, as I said, Justin for lining up all our music. I want to thank our AV team, who pivoted in a number of ways, both at different locations and adding speakers and getting your feedback and doing all the stuff. They've been fantastic, and getting stuff up onto the web. So thank you guys for doing that. It's awesome. And finally, I want to thank Four Corners Brewery for hosting us, and for Randall, the manager, and for all the things they've done. Thank you so much. And I hope when you get your drinks that you take care of them well, because they've really done a super job. Let me say a few things about our format. Again, if you're new with us, let me just say how the night's going to work. In just a moment, I'll ask our speaker to come up. She's going to speak somewhere between 35 and 45 minutes, and then we're going to take about a 15-minute break after that, and then we'll come back for 20 minutes of Q&A, and then we'll end our evening. During that break, we'll take a short break, and then Paul Demer will come back during that time, and he's going to do a few more songs for us during that time. There are a couple different pieces of paper in those little buckets on your tables. They're important. The first little skinny slip is the Q&A form. So during the talk, if you have a question that you want to follow up and ask our speaker, write it down on one of those little slips of paper. We're going to come get them during the break, and our speaker will be fast and furious figuring out which one she's going to answer and how she's going to do it and whatever else during those 20 minutes. So we'll come during the break and get those. So during the talk, make sure you write down some questions. The other form is a survey, and we want to be able to plan for next summer. So we're interested in what topics are of interest to you, what kind of feedback you have about the venue and all the different stuff. So give us some feedback on that. We'll collect those during the break as well. So take a moment to do that. Well, it's my pleasure to get to introduce our speaker tonight, Dr. Jodie Elder. Jodie is a licensed professional counselor supervisor. She is, I got to get to where my notes are. Give me a second. She is also a licensed marriage family therapist. She's an adjunct professor at Southern Methodist University. She serves as a professional board member for the Texas Board of Examiners of Marriage and Family Therapists. She did her undergraduate work. She did at University of Texas, where she majored in psychology. She did her master's at Texas State University in San Marcos in professional counseling, and then she did her doctorate in counselor education and supervision at Texas A&M Commerce. Over the past 15 years, she's done a lot of counseling for like adults and juveniles and like families and couples and individuals, and I think maybe aliens. I don't know, like a little bit of everything, I think. And she is a speaker. She is a certified Daring Way facilitator, which is the group that draws upon Brene Brown's teaching and research and all of that. She continues to this day. She's in private counseling and available for people, and I'll just say I would go see her if she wasn't such a good friend of mine, but I'm sure she'd be fantastic. Would you join me in welcoming Dr. Jodie Elder?
Well, howdy, howdy. I am so glad to see all of your friendly faces out here. Some of you are smiling at me, some of you are nodding your head, and you are on the right track, because I want you to know that I'm here tonight to have a conversation with you. I'm a therapist. Let me make you feel safe right away. I'm not diagnosing you. I'm not judging you. I'm not evaluating you in any way. I only do that if you pay me for it, all right? So we're good. Feel safe in this conversation. I never, not at SMU when I have 3-hour grad class, I never lecture for 45 minutes without stopping and talking to my audience, right? So I want to make sure that I'm not Charlie Brown's teacher. So I'm going to ask for some participation. You'll know when it's time, but just be ready, okay? I'm going to give you, that's informed consent. When you go to a therapist, they tell you this is what's going to be in your therapy. Well, I'm telling you this is what you're getting from me tonight. All right. So just to get started, my topic is spirituality and mental health. So we're going to talk first about what I think is essential for a person to be mentally healthy. There's two things, connection and direction. And we'll unpack those, okay? So what are those two things? Tell me, what are they? I love it, yes. All right, we got this. All right. So we're going to talk first about connection. We're going to unpack direction. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what gets in the way of us having connection and direction. And then we're going to spend some time talking about how spirituality feeds connection and direction for us. We good? Everybody's on the same page? All right, let's do this. So first of all, I wanted to share with you some evidence out of neuroscience. I am fascinated, as I'm sure some of you are, with what we're learning about ourselves and our brains and the way that they work. We have all this fancy equipment now, MRIs and spectrometers and blah, 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 blah. That's not my field. And we learn about what happens in our brain. Now, how many of you have heard of mirror neurons? Just raise your hand if you know what that is. Oh, good. I love it when you don't know, so I can give you something new. All right, so here's what a mirror neuron is. It's a cell, it's a neuron in your brain. And what happens is when I see you lift up that glass and take a drink, the part of my brain that would light up if I were doing that lights up. If I see you crying, the part of my brain that would light up if I was crying lights up. It is the way that we feel and perceive the world of others. So this is the entire basis of connection with other people. It's a mirror neuron. I get what's going on with you because it's going on with me in a smaller way when I see it happen to you. This is the basis for empathy. When we say, I feel your pain, you are not lying. You really are feeling their pain. That is why it is so incredibly painful, so painful for us as human beings to sit with someone else in their pain. What do we want to do? Fix it. Yes, we want to take it away. If you got a bobo, let me put a Band-Aid on it, right? If you're crying and sad, let me do something to make you happy again. And that's because I feel it too. Now, I will tell you the most powerful thing that you can do with anyone in pain, especially emotional pain, is sit with them in it and let them know they're not alone. But it is so hard because all those mirror neurons are firing in your brain and it makes you uncomfortable, right? Don't you start to squirm in your seat like a little bit when somebody's really sobbing like, oh, how do I make it better? You don't. The way that you make it better is sit with them in their pain so they know they're not alone. So that's one way we know that we are biologically wired for connection. We are designed that way. Here's another way. There was a 2012 study that was done, and what they found with all those fancy machines is that when you experience a social pain, like you don't get invited to the party, or someone snubs you and is rude, or someone says something that hurts your feelings, where does that register in your brain? In the exact same place that lights up when you are in physical pain. Okay, I want you to stop and think about that for a second. Social pain registers in your brain in the exact same way that physical pain does. We are wired to be connected to other people. And when our connections to other people are damaged, we call that an attachment injury, we actually feel pain. So when someone says they have a broken heart, they kind of do. It really does hurt physically. So there's another way. We've proven with all this fancy imaging stuff that we are wired for connection. So now there's been lots of studies done about people and how they fare when they actually don't have connection. What happens when we're deprived of that? So unfortunately, in Romania, there was a study done on Romanian children who were raised in orphanages for the first couple years of their lives. And the only physical contact that they had, they were just laid in a crib, was if they were being fed, diapered, or bathed. Otherwise, they just laid in a crib. There was nobody cooing at them. There was nobody singing to them. There was nobody cuddling them. There was nobody making eye contact with them. So, as you could predict, those kids had terrible behavior problems. They had terrible academic problems, right? But here's the part that was astounding to me. They had less brain matter than kids who were raised in homes where they were nurtured and loved. Our brains need that connection. Here's the other part that blew me away. They took some of those kids and put them in foster homes where they got that love and that nurturing and that connection that they need. And by the time they were 8, they were taken out of the orphanage at 2. By the time they were 8, their brains looked like just any 8-year-old's brain, because they were able to recover through the power of love. I mean, I know it sounds hokey, but really, it's just love. We all need it. All we need is love. I mean, come on. I know, I'm a therapist. You can just write me off, but it is real. The studies prove it. Okay, so how about this? What about if you have less severe deprivation? I mean, what about just loneliness? I'm lonely. I miss having connection with someone, right? All the studies, so they did a meta-analysis. That just means they took all these individual studies and they looked at, okay, what do the results say in general? In general, loneliness is extremely highly correlated with depression, anxiety, less life satisfaction, sleep disturbances, cardiovascular disease, and early mortality. So without connection, we wither on the vine. Okay? So all these studies show just how much we need connection. Now let's talk about when we do have connection. How does that help us out? So it can actually reduce both physical and social pain. So let me unpack that a little bit. The physical pain first. In 2006, they did this study. I love this study. They put women who were married in one of those MRI machines. If you've ever been in one, they're terrifying. It's a tube, and you like get rolled in on this, you lay down on this thing, and they roll you in, and you go, and it's like, right? I mean, who's been in one of those? They're terrible. Okay, so they say to these women, you're gonna go in the machine. When you're in there, we're gonna shock you a little bit. Okay. A third of the women just went in by themselves. A third of the women held the hand of a stranger, just a Confederate who was helping out with the experiment. And a third of the women held their husband's hand. The brain differences were astounding. Whose brain registered the pain the most? He says the men. He says the men, yes. Bob warned me about audience participation. All right, so all right, you be quiet. All right, so whose brains registered the most pain? The women who didn't hold anybody's hand, right? And whose brains registered the least amount of pain? Holding their husband's hands. Yes, so the actual sensation of physical pain was reduced by holding the hand of someone you love. That's amazing to me, how we, in our connections with other people, can be protected against something as real as physical pain. So it not only buffers us from physical pain, connection also buffers us from social pain. So there's this longitudinal study, that means they followed somebody over time. And it's 700 kids from Hawaii. They followed them from birth all the way to 40. That's some data right there. So there's a big part of these kids that were born into some serious adversity. There was only one parent in the home who hadn't graduated more than 8th grade. That was a big bunch of them, right? There was drug use in the home. There was mental illness in the home. So there was all these risk factors for these kids. And as you would expect, 2/3 of these kids went on to have behavior problems in school, academic problems, they had juvenile records, they had problems. Even into adulthood, they had mental illness and more chronic illness, right? But 1/3 of them went on to become responsible, caring, productive adults. They had stable marriages, they had stable jobs, they never had any record, any kind of legal record, right? No problems with the law. How in the world do you make it out of that kind of adversity and still be okay? Here's what they found. There were 3 groups of what they called protective factors. The kids that made it out had these 3 things. As an individual, they had one thing they thought they were good at, and they used that gift to help other people. The family protective factor, they had one relationship in their life that was stable and nurturing. So one healthy adult in their life. And the third was community factors. They were plugged into a community that nurtured them. Not only that, but they knew how to seek out those connections, and they went to the elders of their community. They went to the Bobs of the community and said, preacher, I'm struggling, can you help me out here? They went to their youth group leader for support. They even went to their boyfriend or girlfriend's parents, right? Kids like that who adopt their significant other's parent as their parent. They knew how to plug into those community resources. So how did they make it out? Connection. Love, right? All we need is love. By the end of it, you're going to be singing it with me. All right, so now we've seen that Connection, we're built for connection. Connection can save us from some really hard stuff, physical pain, social pain, right? But the nature of our connection makes a big difference. We need to have a secure attachment. That's what we therapists call it. When you come in and you start telling me about your life, I'm immediately looking at how you're connected to the people in your life. Because there's secure attachment, there's insecure attachment. Insecure attachment, I cannot show up and be who I am and have that be accepted. I have to either walk on eggshells and please you, constantly gauging where you're at and how you're doing and what I can do to keep you happy, or I can't rely on you at all, so I just take care of me. There's lots of people in those kinds of connections. But when you have a secure attachment, I can show up, be me, good, bad, ugly, all of it. And I know you're gonna love me. I know you're gonna hold my hand through it. Who I am is fundamentally okay, and you love me. That's a secure attachment. Those are the kinds of attachments that we need in our lives so that we can be mentally healthy. So let me ask you a question. This is a participation part. Think, how many people do you have in your life that if you called in the middle of the night and said, I need you, they would drop everything and come? What's that number? Hold it up. I got a 5, I got a 3, I got a 6, yeah. I got a 10 in the back, wow. 2, yeah. 5, yes. So most of us are either 5 or under, right? We had one person who's really loved over there with a 10. But I mean, for the most part, it's 5 or below because those are precious connections. And it's different than a like on Facebook or a follower on Instagram. These are peeps where you can show them the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they will be there no matter what. That's what I mean by secure attachment. That's what I mean by connection, okay? We need that love. So we've unpacked the first part, connection, right? Mentally healthy people have good connections in their lives. Now let's move on. Who remembers what the second part was? We need connection and direction. Bam! I love it. Y'all are on fire tonight. All right, so now we're going to move on to the second part. We're going to talk about direction. Or direction, a little more complicated, it has 2 parts, okay? The first part is values, and the second part is meaning, okay? So let's finish this. I'm going to see how many Aaron Tippin fans there are in the room. Ready? You've got to stand for something or you'll... Oh, come on, I thought more of you would know that song. But for those of you who did know it, it's you got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. What he's singing about is values. We have to know what our guiding light is. We have to know what our priorities are so that we can make decisions about our lives. Without that, we're just kind of floating out there in life, going willy-nilly. We don't know what's going on with us, right? So what are abstracts and why do they matter? I mean, what are values and why do they matter? They're abstract ideals that serve as important guiding principles in people's lives. They're like our compass. They're like our true north. And I can feel, I don't know about you, but I can feel it in my gut when I start to wander off from that. This doesn't feel right. I know better than this. I'm doing it anyway, but it's not right. Then I can, okay, that was, yeah, and then I get back on track, right? We have that gut that tells us, you ain't living right. Get back on track. That's our values. That's our true north telling us. And when we live our values, we are mentally healthy. A 2017 study of almost 7,000 adults, again, that's a ton of data. Living according to our values significantly predicts mental health, social success, and satisfaction with life. So when you ain't living right, you know it, and it's called ego dystonic. Basically, it means like what I know to be right ain't what I'm doing. I can't jive the two, and it's eating me alive. So we need to feel like we are in alignment with what we hold as priority in our lives. So just like the kind of attachment we have matters, the kind of values we hold matter. It makes a difference. So they did a 2002 study of business students, right? So for business students, you got to make money, These business students had some very materialistic values that participated in this study. They were focused on money, image, and popularity. Those students had more anxiety, higher depression, and lower well-being in general. So yes, you need values, but you need the right values. So you're not chasing fame, you're not chasing the almighty dollar, right? You're not chasing things that don't feed your soul. And we're going to talk more about how do we know what feeds our soul? How do we do that? But it's important that we have those values and live by them, but they got to be the right values. It's like our lantern in the dark, right? When we hit a challenging situation, we go back to those values to help us make those decisions. So do I tell the truth and face the consequence, or do I lie and get away with it? Ooh, such a tough call sometimes, right? Do I market the product that I know will harm my client because it will make me a ton of money? Or do I not put it out on the shelf because I know it will harm people, and I forfeit all that money? So we have to know what is our guiding light. So that's values. Now the second part is meaning. You have to know that your life has meaning. You are here for a purpose. I don't know what that is for you. It's unique to every person, but you have to know what it is. And when you don't live by it, there's a little part of your soul that dies every day. What is your meaning? Why are you here? Okay, so I'm going to preach a little bit of the gospel of Brene Brown. Anybody familiar with her work? I love her. She transformed my life personally and professionally. So I'm going to preach a little bit of Brene gospel. All right, here we go. Brene does research by interviewing people. It's called qualitative research. Rather than just fill out the survey, let's take your numbers and crunch them, she says, tell me your words. And then she filters through thousands of people's words and looks at the pattern and says, in general, this is what people experience. And what she has found through thousands of interviews over 20 years of work as a researcher is that meaningful work is one of the cornerstones of well-being. Meaningful work is one of the cornerstones of our mental health and well-being. She says we all have gifts and talents, and when we cultivate those gifts and we share them with the world, we create a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. And here's the thing. Like our gifts and talents, that meaning is unique to each one of us. So I'll start us off. This is a participation part. Hi, my name is Jodie. I'm a professor and I'm a therapist. I'm a professor because I have a gift of taking very complicated stuff and repackaging it and serving it up in a way that people can understand. And I love to see the light bulb go off in my students' faces when they get it. And I'm a therapist because I think it is such a sacred privilege to walk with people on their journeys and to guide them toward healing. Who's next? Go.
Hello, my name is Sabra, and I've been in marketing promotions for the last 10 years, acting as a publicist for primarily small businesses here locally. And I'm also a writer, so I would help businesses write their story of what they do, why it's important, and help share that story through media sources, TV and magazines.
And why was that personally meaningful to you?
It kind of similar to yours. When I would see a client that would have a spot on a TV show and they feel validated and heard and ultimately receive business.
Yeah?
It was very satisfying for them, but also for me to experience that.
So, for those of you who didn't hear, Sabra said she was in PR. She did that because she loved to see small businesses grow and support people in developing their business and their passions. And that was meaningful to her, to be able to support people in that way. Anybody else? Go ahead, thanks.
Well, I've been an immigration lawyer my whole life. Now I primarily assist professional athletes.
Okay.
Foreign
Yeah.
athletes come here, but throughout my career, I've also
Oh,
decades later, and I've helped some of these kids from Central America.
yeah.
5 of them come up, and they're all under 13, and you help them become legal here, so it's very rewarding.
So he says he's an immigration lawyer. He helps people come to the United States, and they remember him for years, and they say, thank you, I remember that you helped me through that tough part of my life. And it's been very meaningful for him to help people traverse that very tricky process. So I make that point because, yes, I'm a helping professional. And when you think about meaningful work, people go, well, I can't be a therapist. You don't have to be a therapist or a social worker. You can be a PR specialist, an immigration lawyer. I have a dear friend, and she's a CPA. She loves helping people do their estate planning. Now, that would be the most boring thing in the world to me. She loves it because people get their ducks in a row and they feel like, oh, right? So it doesn't matter what the work is. Your gifts are your gifts. It is your job to share them with the world. That is meaningful work. And all the studies that I could tell you that I have on this paper, that I'm probably going to skip over some of them, say that work is meaningful. So one of the studies, I'm just going to share one, they did a study of people in over 150 countries, and they asked them to answer this question. What would the best possible future for you look like? And they came up with 5 tenets of well-being. Okay, so yeah, there's the givens, right? Physical health. Yeah, nobody wants to be sick. Nobody wants to suffer. So yeah, I want to be healthy. Money. I want to have financial security so I don't have to stress over who's going to pay, if I can pay that bill, right? But there was some more. There was strong relationships. Duh, I just said that. And then there was engagement in the area in which you live, a strong sense of community and connection. And the last one was liking what you do, having a meaningful career. And so none of that really surprised me. I don't think any of you are going, oh, with that data, right? But here's the part that did shock me. Individuals who used their strengths every day and liked what they did daily in their work were twice as likely to do well in the other 4 arenas. So what does that tell you? When you hate what you do every day, all day, it bleeds into every other area. So when you go to work and you've had a long, hard day and you're stressed out and you're miserable, do you come home and connect happily with your partner? Are you happy mommy or gripey mommy? I know I'm gripey mommy, right? So that career, that meaningful work makes a difference. Now, let me put this out there. I feel like it's important to say. When I say work, it doesn't have to be paid work. It doesn't have to be a job. There are lots of people who don't go to work but still do meaningful work, right? There's social work, there's charity events, there's all kinds of things that you can do volunteering that are meaningful. You just have to feel motivated by that, right? So I'm going to quote a theologian. His name is Howard Thurman. He says, don't ask what the world needs. Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is more people who have come alive. So that is the direction piece, right? We got values. We know how to make a good decision and what that looks like, and that's direction. We get up out of bed every day and do something that means something to us. All right, so what are the 2 elements that are essential for mental health? Yeah, all right, yeah. All right, we're good. Connection and direction. Thank you. Hang in there. We're getting there. So now what are the barriers to connection and direction? What keeps us from having those essential elements for our well-being? So I'm going to preach a little bit more Gospel of Brene now. Brene calls them gremlins. It's that little voice that says, you're not enough. You're not smart enough to do that. You're not pretty enough. You're not young enough to make a difference anymore. You're just not enough. And if you're sitting there going, how'd she get in my head? Just know that you're not alone. Every one of us has that gremlin whispering in our ear. The trick is to take that gremlin and go, I hear you. I choose not to believe you today. Here's what I think. We have these, I call them tapes, but that makes me sound really old. So I don't know what you call it these days, but there's this tape that runs in our head day in and day out that tells us we're not enough. And sometimes we don't even know it's there, but it totally changes how we show up. So if I feel like I'm not enough, I'm not going to show up and be authentically who I am in connection with you, because who I am is not enough. So I'm going to pretend to be somebody different so that you don't really know the real me, because who I am isn't good enough. So that interferes with our connection with other people in our lives because we're too afraid to show up and be who we are. How does it interfere? We end up chasing our worth. Brene calls it hustling for your worth. You are constantly working to jump through the next hoop. If I do this, I'll be enough. If I get this next procedure, I'll be enough, right? If I get this next degree, I'll be enough. I got a PhD, right? I mean, come on, that'll tell you a little bit about my pathology. I needed to be smart enough. I needed the PhD. I needed to prove it. Plus, I wanted to teach. There's that. But so we all have these gremlins that tell us we're not enough. So we end up chasing our worth. We end up hustling for our worth. And when we're hustling, we forget to connect. When we're hustling, we forget to connect because we're too afraid to just stop and be, because we're working for our worth. I got to meet this next deadline. I got to get this next project done. I got to do this. I'll be enough when I jump through this hoop. Instead of just saying, I'm here, baby. I ain't perfect, but I'm sure good. I'm good enough. You got to tell the gremlins to shut the hell up. All right, now how do the gremlins keep you from being on the right direction? We all have gifts. You were given gifts. We'll get to the spirituality piece in a little bit. But you got gifts. Share them with the world. And there's this little gremlin on your shoulder. One of them says you're not enough. But if you get the gumption to say, I think I got something to share with the world, the other one says, who do you think you are? You don't have anything to share. Nobody's going to listen to you. Nobody's going to use your services. And it keeps us so small. I think we are not afraid of our darkness. We are afraid of our light. We are afraid of our infinite power if we were to step into those gifts and talents and share them with the world. What would happen? I don't know. It's too scary. I don't want to try. Those gremlins keep us from being who we are in the world. That's what keeps us, that's that self-doubt. I'm going to call them gremlins, right? Then there's this thing called comparison. Anybody ever go on Facebook and go, oh, my life sucks? You laugh because it hits home, right? Social media use is highly correlated with depression and anxiety. Why? Because the more you use it, the crappier you feel about yourself and your own life. That's just the truth of it. But Anne Lamont has a bit of wisdom. She's an author to share with us. And here's what she says that I think is so profound. Never compare your insides to somebody else's outsides. You're looking at what they choose to share with the world, which is their outside, right? Nobody says, had a huge blow up with my spouse this morning, think we're getting a divorce. Nobody says that. They just share those beach pictures like this, right? I mean, those moments are real. I don't want to, trivialize that. But we don't share the nitty gritty. We don't share the real stuff, right? So don't compare your insides with somebody else's outsides. So Brene gives us this other bit of wisdom. She says, all right, look, everybody. Gremlins, they're like toddlers. The more you ignore them, the louder they get. It's best just to acknowledge their messages. So when you feel that, you look in the mirror and you go, oh, look at those lines. Look at that gray hair. I'm not young enough. Or I'm not smart enough. Or I'm not whatever it is. You say, Gremlin, I hear ya. Thanks for telling me I'm afraid. I get it. I'm scared. I'm going to do it anyway. When you hear the gremlin say, you don't have anything to offer, you say, thanks for telling me I'm afraid. I'm going to do it anyway, right? So you got to listen to them, acknowledge them, set them aside, or say, come along and let me show you, little gremlin. I'm going to do it anyway. So find your gumption and do it. So I'm going to stop. We got 2 things for mental health. What's the first one? Connection. What's the second one? And what gets in the way of us having them? Gremlins. All right. Now, third point. What does spirituality have to do with any of that? Okay, so we're going to go back and we're going to unpack connection and direction. We're going to talk about how spirituality directly speaks to all of that. Every single bit of it. So, first of all, we are fans and followers of a relational God. Father, Son, and, right? 3 in 1. He's relational. He wants us to be in relationship with him, right? So we also know we are never alone. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Isaiah 41. So when you're in the MRI machine and life is shocking you, are you reaching out and going, thanks for being there? Or are you like, I'm in this all alone? Because you're going to feel more pain if you don't reach out and rely on a God who is just begging you to lean on him. So Kenneth Pargament is a leading researcher in religion and coping. Basically, he studies how we use religion to get through the hardness of life. And he says we use religion in 3 main ways. First, prayer, going directly to God, right? That's our first connection. Second is the Bible, Psalms, Scripture, and what did he say? Devotionals. So reading God's Word, that's another way to connect with our God. And then the last way, which should be no surprise, is community. Our faith communities make a big difference for us. So spirituality speaks directly to our need for connection. God says, I got you. I'm right here. You have to reach out and decide you want that connection, and you're going to plug into it. But here's the thing. Just like before, you have to have a secure connection. You also have to have a secure connection with your God. So what does that look like? Remember I said a secure connection is when you show up and you don't hide any of the good, the bad, or the ugly. God knows your heart already. He just needs you to speak it to him. He just needs you to say, I'm struggling today. Or you know what? I'm really pissed off at you. I don't understand why you would do that. That is okay. A lot of people get kind of like, ooh, that's a little bit of blasphemy she's speaking up there. No, God is big enough for your pain, and God is big enough for your anger, and God is ready for you to lay that at his feet. That's a secure connection with God. Just put it all out there. Tell him where you're at. So I gave you lots of neuroscience stuff about how our brain changes when we're in connection with other people, but what about how our brain changes when we're in connection with God? There's this whole new field called, I'm going to look it up, neurotheology. Basically looks at how does your brain change when you're praying? How does your brain change when you're meditating? How does your brain change when you are connecting with God? All the studies say lower anxiety, lower depression, higher levels of overall well-being, lower blood pressure, lower heart rate. So overall, physically and mentally, you are better when you are connected to God. It's that whole you're not alone thing. Somebody's holding your hand. That makes a difference when life knocks you down. Okay? So Andrew Newberg is a guy who wrote this book called How God Changes Your Brain. He's like one of the leading dudes in this neurotheology approach. And he's looked at the brains of meditators, people who meditate for hours at a time. Now, we don't all do that. We got jobs, meaningful work, right? But people who do meditate for over a long time, like years, for at least an hour a day, 2 hours a day, here's what they find. They have decreased activity in the brain in the areas that give us our sense of space and time. So when we pray deeply, we feel more connected to the whole world, right? That means I'm not just in this space and time, I'm in all space and time. I'm connected to the divine. So it's pretty amazing what we see in our brains when we pray. So we're also biologically wired to be connected to God. Oh, dude, 5 minutes. All right, let's get moving. So how about connection with ourselves? So we talked about connection with God, connection with ourselves. How do we do that? Well, remember those gremlins? You're not enough. Who do you think you are? I know who I am. I'm a child of God. I am loved, and I am worthy of love and belonging, and so are you. So God tells us that the gremlins are wrong. Now, am I perfect? No, I mess up every day. But am I good enough? Yep. Do I have gifts to share? Yep. Because God told me so. Because God told me so. You are a creation of a divine being. Who are you to doubt your worth? So when the gremlin speaks up to you, that's how you answer. We are children of God. It says, and I will be a father to you, and you shall be sons and daughters to me, says the Lord Almighty, 2 Corinthians, right? So the other thing is there is no hustling for your worth with God. Not required. For by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works. Ephesians chapter 2. So God says, you don't have to hustle for me to love you. I love you no matter what. Now, do I always like your choices? Nope. But I do always love you. So that's how spirituality speaks to our connection with ourselves and tells those little gremlins to be quiet. Now, what about connections with others? It is no secret that the community of faith is a powerful protector. When people lose somebody, what do? You take food to their house, right? I mean, how many casseroles can you put in a freezer? It's because we love people. We love on them, right? Why do we have small group meetings? So we can share our lives with other people and they can pray with us and support us. When someone says, let me pray with you, or can I pray for you? That is a powerful connection. So our communities of faith are those stress buffers from social pain and physical pain, right? So we talked about connection, let's talk about direction. I'm gonna make this short and sweet. When it comes to values, how did God give us the rules? What are they? The 10 Commandments, yes, right? God said, if you want to live right, here's how you live. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, boom, go do it. Not that easy, but he did give us the values. He did tell us how to live in communion with him. First 4 are about God. Second, the rest of them, the other 6, are about how to live with each other. So he gave us our values very clearly, hands down. And then how did he give us meaning? God calls us to serve one another. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. John 13. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. 1 Peter. God says, I gave you gifts, you better use them to take care of everybody. That's what you're called to do. So when you're like, you hear that gremlin that say, who do you think you are? You don't have anything meaningful to contribute. You say, I do too. God told me I do. What are my gifts? find them and use them. That's what you're called to do. So Brene Brown says, sharing our gifts and talents with the world is the most powerful source of connection with God. If developing and sharing our gifts is how we honor spirit and we connect with God, self-doubt is letting our fear undermine our faith. So you tell those gremlins to shut the heck up, because God called you here at this time for a specific reason. And you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all together. We help each other out of our own brokenness. That's how we help each other. I'm broke in different ways, and I put it back together, and I go share that with other people. So take your pain and your brokenness and your gifts and go change the world. Show up, live brave, and be seen for who God created you to be. All right, so like any good sermon, I'm going to end with a challenge. My husband's a priest, by the way, so I'm used to this format. All right, so here's your challenge. Are you reaching out every day to hold God's hand when life gives you trials? Or are you in that MRI machine all by yourself saying, I got this? How is self-doubt holding you back? In what ways have your gremlins convinced you that you're not enough? And how can you fully embrace your worth as a child of God and show up and use your gifts to change the world? I'm done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Elder. We're looking forward to some Q&A. And what's going to happen now is we're going to take about 5 minutes, just a break. And then about 5 minutes from now, Paul Demer is going to come back and sing a few songs. And then we're coming back for 20 minutes of Q&A. If you've got a question, write it on the slip of paper. We're coming to collect them now. We're going to get them to our speaker. Thank you. Hey, everybody, if you'll welcome back Paul Demer.
Thank you, Father Bob. And Dr. Elder, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts with us tonight. This is a song for the Gremlins. Lately, you've got them clouds in your eyes, heavy laden, waiting for some stars to align. Lacey, you've been high for a while from a hazy meditation, lost in your mind. Let your guard down like tears on the phone. You're never alone. Make your scars count. Those thorns on your soul could give up their hold. You don't have to tiptoe. Tracing all of your pain to the source, from a hazy meditation. You don't have a choice. Bracing for supper time, civil war. If you float right down the staircase, you won't hear your voice. Let your guard down like tears on the phone. You're never alone. Make your scars count. Those thorns on your soul could give up their hold. You don't have to tiptoe around your feelings. I ain't gonna let go. I'll be right here. So let your guard down like tears on the phone. You're never alone. Make your scars count. Those thorns on your soul could give up their hold. Yeah, let your guard down like tears on the phone. You're never alone. I hope you'll make your scars count. Those thorns on your soul could give up their hold. You don't have to tiptoe. You don't have to tiptoe. Lacey, you got them clouds in your eyes. Thank you. Gonna do a little guitar switcheroo. So part of my work musically the last 10 years has been playing music in assisted living and nursing homes, senior centers, hospitals. And I've heard a lot of great stories along the way. I've been working with a nonprofit called Texas Winds Musical Outreach. And this song's inspired by a very brave woman who was able to find meaning in her life even after multiple griefs and loss. And she was kind enough to share her story with me. This is her song. It's called Anna. You heard a song that made you cry. You don't know why, but it touched something inside. It'd been a while since you felt alive. You'd closed your eyes. You told me that it'd been 6 years since your family set you up in here. It'd been a while since you shed a tear. You disappeared. And I don't apologize when you're feeling so alive. Don't you fake another smile, your shell has started peeling. You've been stuck on the inside where you're trying to survive. And don't you dry those eyes, your tears might be your healing. Whoa, whoa, been holding years of grief inside. You buried 3 lovers in your life. You don't know why they had to die. Well, you stayed alive. But Anna, when you look in the mirror, who do you see there after all these years? I see a fighter facing her fears when you reappear. And I don't apologize when you're feeling so alive. Don't you fake another smile, your shell has started peeling. You've been stuck on the inside where you're trying to survive. And don't you dry those eyes, your tears might be your healing. Your tears might be your healing. Your tears might be your healing. And I don't apologize when you're feeling so alive. Don't you fake another smile, your shell has started peeling. You've been stuck on the inside where you're waking up tonight. And don't you dry those eyes, your tears might be your healing. Thank you. Just got one more for y'all. This is the title track of a record I made in 2018 called I'm Glad You're Still Around. It's about how life is a fragile miracle and gratitude is good medicine. The first 2 months were just a feeling, an ivy dripping in the vein. When all the joy was so untainted, like Eden, pure before the pain. But we pulled back the curtain and fought to make it through. still around. I did the laundry in the ninth grade. Our home was quiet with you gone. You fought the chemicals inside you like darkness just before the dawn. We wondered if we lost you. Your eyes had lost their glow, but miracles still come true, and I hope you'll always know. I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still around. Yeah, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still around, still around. Oh, 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 oh. You aren't the one I was afraid of. Some distance I could never reach. So scared of messing up my chances, I hid the love you gave to me. But grace ain't on condition, and God ain't up some hill. He's closer than a vision, like prophecy fulfilled. Yeah, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still around. Yeah, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still, I'm glad you're still around, still around. Still around, still around. Oh, oh, oh. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It was awesome. We really appreciate it. We're going to welcome back Dr. Jodie Elder for 20 minutes. I think she got about an hour's worth of questions, but we're going to hold it to 20 minutes. So I invite you guys to tune back in. Dr. Jodie Elder.
All right. Hey, everybody. All right, so I got to find me a quote real quick. Where is it? So, there it is. So this is going to help me answer my first question. Thank y'all for your engagement during the talk and for all these great questions. I'm so excited to hear from you and to hear what resonated with you and what questions you might have. So I'm going to start out, I'm going to dive right in to one of the hardest ones. You ready for this? Let's go. So, if you are totally pissed off at God, and you do not want to have anything to do with God for personal reasons, are you totally screwed with no hope of peace? Wow. That's awesome. That is raw pain. And that is my specialty. So I'm glad you asked. Here's what I would say. I would go back to what I said before. God's big enough for your pain. I'm going to read you this quote from Brene Brown. She says, I can confidently say that stories of pain and courage almost always include two things: praying and cussing. Sometimes at the same time. Right? God can handle our anger no matter what it looks like. So if you're mad at God, I would encourage you to spend some time processing that. Probably there's some really deep hurt there. And I actually wrote my dissertation on this. My dissertation topic was about how the spiritual lives of parents change after the death of a child. Yeah, that's a hushing topic, right? One of the most painful losses that you can endure. How do you stay connected to God through that? By praying and cussing. That's a big part of it. By showing up and being honest about your pain and being totally raw and don't hold anything back. The other part of that is there's all this fancy language called the assumptive world. What it means is we have assumptions about the way that we think the world works. I'm safe. If I make good choices, mostly good things will come to me. And when those things fall apart before our eyes, so does our entire world. So does our entire world. So I was 25 when I got a phone call. I was in grad school, and the phone call was this. Your grandmother was driving, she's 81. Your brother, who's 16, your cousin, who's 16, and your other cousin, who's 12, were in the car. They were all going to dinner together. Broadsided by a truck, dead, all of them on the spot. Talk about my assumptive world falling apart. The hardest part was not grieving my family, which was beyond words painful. It was grieving my God. My conception of God was blown to bits. It's called theodicy. I've done a lot of reading about it. God is good and merciful. God is all-powerful. When shit like that happens, how do you put those two together? You don't. Something has to change. So I had to go revisit my entire view of God. I had to figure out, okay, if that's not true anymore, now what? So when your assumptive world falls apart, you have every right to be pissed because you are in excruciating pain and you don't know what to do with it. God's big enough for your pain. Whoever wrote that, go talk to somebody. Go talk to somebody who can help you sort through all the pieces and start to put it back together again in a totally new way, because your old way doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't fit. You have to create something new so that you can be happy and healthy again. So there's my answer to that one. The second one is the same. I'm pissed at God and it's hard to trust. Can you relate? Yeah. And what do? I just told you. Go talk to somebody, right? Figure out how to put the pieces back together in a way that makes sense. All right, so here's the next one. I'm guilty of being in the MRI machine all alone. I often find myself having a hard time reaching out to God. I pray daily, but I don't want to burden God with my troubles. Any tips? I know God loves me, but I just feel guilty. So let me put it to you this way. You're a child of God. Apparently, whoever wrote this believes in God, right? So you're a child of God. Maybe you understand a parent-child relationship too. So if your child was struggling and suffering, would you want them to come to you? Or would you want them to say, oh, I'm too much trouble. Never mind. I'll just deal with it on my own. No, you would say, come here, baby. Let me help. That's what I'm here for. I just took the words right out of God's mouth. Come here, baby. That's what I'm here for. Come to me, right? So we talked about attachment types. That I don't want to bother you with my stuff, that's an insecure attachment. Know that God is there 100% of the time and ready to help. You just have to be willing to let that help in. So create a secure attachment with your God. All right. How do people decide to seek professional help? Is it a crisis or just a feeling that things aren't right or that they need help? All right, so as a clinician, I will tell you sometimes it's a crisis, and it's a tragedy of some sort or a loss, and it just completely overwhelms the person's ability to cope, and they know they can't do it on their own, and they reach out for help, rightfully so. That's what we do when we're overwhelmed. We ask someone to help us carry the burden. That is my job, is to help carry your burden until you can handle it on your own. Now, there's another way that people seek help. We all have these things in our lives that kind of tick us off every day. They're uncomfortable, they don't feel good, but we live with them. Discomfort is a motivator for change. There's an axiom in therapy: nobody changes unless they're uncomfortable. So, if you get uncomfortable enough, then you get motivated to change. But if you're not uncomfortable enough, you're not going to change. It's kind of like when you talk about addiction, where's your bottom? That's kind of what it is. Are you uncomfortable enough to do something about it? So sometimes it's a crisis, and sometimes it's like, all right, I'm done. I'm uncomfortable enough now. That's what it is. All right. I agree that spirituality is essential to connection and direction. How do you counsel someone who has no faith? So I'm not a Christian counselor, believe it or not. I mean, I just got up here and preached a sermon for you, right? But I'm not a Christian counselor. That is not how I market myself. I don't have a degree in Christian counseling. I speak Christianity if that is my client's paradigm. I'm happy to support people in their faith if that is there's a wellness wheel, and there's all these different areas of wellness. There's physical health, mental health, spiritual health, intellectual health, career health. There's all these different segments of it. And if somebody wants to include and incorporate spiritual resources in their healing process, I am happy to do that. But if that's not their paradigm, that's not where they're at, I don't preach that to them. That's up to them. So basically, I do connection and direction without the spirituality part. Does that help? I don't know. It's possible. I did the whole first half of the talk on connection and direction and didn't say a word about God, right? So there you go. That's what I do, but I just don't include the God part. All right. I love this one. Does it take two people, both with secure attachment styles, to have a secure attachment, like in a couple's relationship? What if one is secure and one is insecure? That's my jam. I love that stuff. That's the whole thing. When couples come into me because they're having trouble, it's because they don't have a secure attachment. Your attachment style goes right back to your family of origin. How were you raised? What messages did you get from your parents? And how did that change your attachment to them? So what I do with couples when they come in is we go and we dig around in the past. How'd you get to be the way you are? And then these light bulbs start to go off. Oh, now I get it. That's why you are the way you are. Uh-huh. And then this thing happens, this beautiful, magical thing happens. It's called empathy. Oh, I see your pain. Now I know why when I say that, you react that way. Oh, now I can love you in a much deeper way. That is creating a secure attachment. So my job as a couples therapist is to help you figure out what kind of attachment each of you's bring into the relationship, and to help you build a secure attachment together. That's my job. So you don't have to come secure and secure to have a secure kind of relationship. It's called a corrective emotional experience. That's therapeutic lingo for healing in connection. So Brene Brown says we are hurt in connection and we heal in connection. So that's the beauty of therapy. When you come to me as an individual, my job is to be your secure connection. My job is to say, you can say and feel and think whatever you need to in this sacred space, and no one else is ever going to hear it, and no one's going to judge you. That's my job, is to be your secure attachment, and then to teach you how to take that secure attachment out into the world to build secure connections with other people. That's what I do. And then when couples come in, I help them create that secure attachment. It's not so much about a secure attachment with me in that case, it's a secure attachment with each other. Same thing when I have families come in. It's about building that secure attachment. So it's not required for you to get there. My husband is amazing. I love him so much. And he came from, what's that, the Waltons, or that family that they're like just so perfect? What are they? One of those little house on the prairie. He came from that family. I did not. So when we first got married and we had our first big fight, I was like, that's it. I guess we're getting divorced. It's over. And he's like, what are you talking about? You're like cray right now. What's going on? We just had an argument. That's no big deal. But for me, growing up, an argument meant somebody was talking about divorce, because there was not a secure attachment for me to witness. So I have learned how to be securely attached with my husband. Now, I have to give some really good therapist credit, because I too had to go learn how to do that as I grew in my marriage. So it is totally possible. It's possible without therapy, but if you're really struggling, go get therapy from a good therapist. If you don't want to come to me, I got recommendations. All right. I am so in the dumps. What do you tell people who are chronically down? First of all, I'm sorry you're suffering and struggling. That's really hard. I know we've all been there at times, but to be there continually feels like just a beating every day. So of course I would say find some connection and some direction. But even more than that, I would say every day find something to be grateful for. The data is unequivocal about this. Start a gratefulness journal. Every day at the end of the day, write down 3 things that happened that day that you're grateful for. Can't be the same thing day after day. Has to be something different. You can't cheat. So here's what you're training your brain to do. When you're clinically depressed, or when you're depressed, you have a negative bias. It's like you have blinders on and you only see the crap that happens. And you can't see any of the good. And you're just stuck in that heaviness and that cycle of, life just is so hard. But when you do the gratefulness journal, and you know it's coming, I gotta write that damn journal every night. Jodie said I had to. What does that train you to do? All day long, you're looking. I gotta find something to write in this journal. Takes the blinders off, right? Helps you to see the blessings that you have in your life. Gratefulness journals make a big difference. They sound so trite, but they really do, because what you're doing is creating new neural pathways. There's a saying, neurons that fire together, wire together. So the more you repeat something, the more that's going to be your go-to reaction. So you got to undo that. You got to create a new neural pathway of, I got to look for the gratefulness. I got to look at the bright side. And the more you do that, the more you will see it, and it'll take those depression blinders off and maybe lift your mood a little bit. So that's what I would say if you're feeling chronically down in the dumps. Okay. Oh, I need my phone. Bob, can you bring me my phone? I don't think I brought it. So I'm going to read this one, and then I looked up a resource for this question because I love it so much. It says, I'm not a fan of social media, but it's necessary for my job. Any advice on how to keep one's mental health in check? Seriously, right? If you're a business owner, a speaker, or something, and you have to play the game. You have to get out there and you have to post and you have to put your content out, and then you get all these horrible comments back. Well, you know what that is? That's a gremlin out there in the world yelling at you, right? So you're like, oh no, my gremlin was right. I don't have anything good to share with the world. I am horrible. I am worthless. Here's what the Gospel of Brene Brown would say. So Brene Brown posted, do y'all know the story of her? Oh, is it going to let me read this? There we go. So she posted her, she did a TED Talk, and it got posted online, and it went viral. That's how she got big. Like the next morning, there were like 20 million views of her TED Talk. If you've never watched The Power of Vulnerability, 20 minutes will change your life. Go watch Brene Brown, TED Talk. But then she started to get all these haters. Let's call them what they are. They're haters, right? If I look like her, I would need therapy too. All these horrible things. And when you read those, it tears away at your soul, right? So here's what she says. Theodore Roosevelt, she found this quote, and it's something she lives by. It's something I live by. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man or woman who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat. That's beautiful, right? That is beautiful. So when you have to engage with social media and somebody is so horribly ugly, you think, you know what, I'm out there. I'm using my gifts and I'm giving myself to the world. I'm doing meaningful work. What the hell are you doing, hater? That's what you say. That's what you say when you read all that horrible stuff, right? Oh no, one more question. Hold on. Tell Bob to stop being so bossy. Yeah, Bob. They'll listen if I just keep talking. All right. So I'm looking here. All right, so I'm going to go with this one. If connection and direction matter, why does our society value competition so much? That's a really good question. I would say it goes back to two things, power and fear. You got to be on top, or you're not anything. Is that what we call black and white dyadic thinking? I got to be the best or I'm horrible? That's not true. What's that saying? Like if only the most beautiful birds sang their songs, the forest would be really quiet, right? We all have gifts and we all need to show up. There's a lot of division, anger, and pain in this world. All you have to do is look at the news every day. It's so disheartening. I have to really limit my intake of the news because it just really hurts my soul. So how do we get past that and focus on connection and direction? And I would say the answer is empathy. We need to crawl into each other's shoes and see the world from other people's perspectives and understand you're not the other. You're the same as me. We are the same. We are human beings. Do you have a different life experience than I do? Yes. But does that mean yours is not valid because it's different than mine? No. So empathy and connection, I think, is the answer. And there's this beautiful resource I'm going to share with you, and then I'll be done, Bob, sorry. It's called the Human Library Organization. I highly recommend it. So instead of checking out a book, you check out a person. You schedule an appointment with an other that you don't understand or that you're curious about, and you ask them any question you want to help understand their world. So check somebody out from the Human Library and learn what it feels like to stand in their shoes. I think there'd be a lot less division and pain and anger if we just connected, right? Connection. And all we need is love. There it is. All right. Thank you for your time. Y'all have a great night.
Thank you, Jodie. That's amazing. Really, really appreciate it. Glad that you joined us this evening. We'll be back next summer, but a really crucial piece of that is to know more of what you want. I've heard lots of people tonight say more of Jodie, but other thoughts, if you can fill out one of these surveys, we'd love to pick these up, leave them on the table, and we'll get them. And we'll be back next summer. God bless. Glad you were here. Peace.